On today's episode of the Mark Titus Show, Bill Walton passed away on Monday, and it's obviously devastating news to the college basketball world, to the basketball world, to fans of, well, obviously basketball, but just like good people, entertaining people, eccentric personalities, all of the above. Jim Root's joining us on the show today. We're going to talk about Bill Walton at length, and just kind of one of the things that Jim and I didn't talk about, but now that I'm sitting here thinking about it, that's interesting to me about Walton is for a guy who was most of his career was before I was even born. I had a total respect and reverence and appreciation for how good of a player he was and how much his voice in the sport of basketball mattered, and for him to have a legacy that endured and to have like two separate careers of like, you know, his playing career and his broadcasting career, and both of them were iconic in their own rights, and to have people who were like younger still think of Bill Walton as like a force is pretty cool, because the pinnacle of his career was like in the 70s, and he's a guy who was obviously a little older. So anyway, he passed away, and I was a massive Bill Walton fan. I think a lot of you that have followed me through the years know that. At times he was a polarizing commentator, and some people want him to focus more on the game. I was never someone who wanted that. I wanted Bill Walton to be Bill Walton at all times, because he was a treat, and for college basketball to have him calling games, I felt like the sport was just blessed to have him. Because he was a guy who could have done anything. He could have really done anything with his life, and could be entertaining in a million different ways. And for him to be calling college basketball games, it was such a treat. So Jim, I talked about my thoughts on Bill Walton, just because he's a guy that mattered a lot to the sport, but also, and I said this to Jim, like he was a guy who like made me want to be a better person, which sounds maybe a little bit corny, but I'm just being honest and open, and that's how I felt about him. I think that he's an inspirational dude, to say the least, and was such a great ambassador for the sport of basketball. And as dumb as this might sound too, like I am very much a deadhead, and Bill Walton being like the most prominent deadhead that existed out there was awesome as well. So like he was a guy that I very much looked up to, and it was a gut punch to hear that he died. And so anyway, Jim Root and I talked about Bill Walton for a little while. Also talked about some of these. So it's NBA draft decision day for college basketball players. We're recording this on Wednesday, and the big decisions we've gotten so far: John L. Davis is coming back to college. He's going to play at Arkansas, and Alex Karaban is going to come back to UConn for a third year. His first 2 years went pretty well. Alex Karaban won national titles his first 2 years, and now he's going to run it back at UConn with a UConn roster that looked a little shaky the second the national championship ended, and everyone was like, all right, the quest for three-peat, what does that look like? We don't know. A lot of question marks. Suddenly, it looks like a pretty good roster. They're going to be all right. So that'll be interesting as well. I love having Jim on the show. We can talk about just about anything in the world of basketball and have a fun discussion about it. So hopefully you enjoy that. But for about the first half of the show, we're just going to talk about Bill Walton and our memories of him, and the fact that we're two guys that do not even remember watching him play, and yet we have such a fondness. Again, I just find that to be a something that I don't know, represents how big of a deal Bill Walton was. That I don't really feel like I'm a younger guy anymore, but like I'm a guy who never really watched Bill Walton play, and I still just hold him in such high esteem. And that is because of all these stories about how great of a person he was, and how great of a broadcaster he was, and all that sort of thing. It's a devastating loss for the world of basketball, and we're gonna do our best to talk about it. All that coming up. Please enjoy. All right, Jim Root is here. I imagine we're gonna spend some time talking about Bill Walton, talk about these decisions being made in the NBA draft as well. The deadline is we're recording this about 2:30ish. Central Time on the deadline. People are waiting, I guess, before we get to Bill Walton. You have till midnight tonight, right, to back out of the draft. What's the thought process for those who are going to back out but haven't backed out yet? Is just like, I'm going to make everyone stress out to the last second before I...
That or look at me. Like, come
yeah.
on.
What are you going to learn in the next couple hours that's going to influence your decision?
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at a list. I've got like 10 guys that haven't decided. You have to assume 9 of them know right now, right? How many are actually still truly deciding?
I guess you use every second you have to gather info. I don't know, but I like to think that all these dudes kind of have the information that they need. Maybe it's just like they need to come to grips with that. Like they're coming back. It's just in their head they're like, I'm going to the NBA, and everyone around them's like, no, you're not. You're not. You got to go back.
Here's my guess is what it is. Their I'm back Photoshop isn't ready yet. They can't return until they have the graphic ready to go on.
Yeah. And as we know, Joe Tipton does all of those, so he's just like working overtime right now. Just fucking grinding.
This is April 15th for him. He was an accountant. Yes.
All right, let's talk about Bill Walton. Bill Walton passed on Monday, 71 years old, of cancer that it wasn't, I don't know if secret's the right word, but this was certainly something I didn't know about. Did you know about this?
I won't call it secret, but it was, people did not announce it. It was not publicized at all. Like, I don't think anybody knew it, and that's why it hit so hard.
Yeah. Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, because it's weird that a 71-year-old guy, which I don't even really feel like is that old, and I guess that might just be because I'm getting old, and like the older you get, the less old, like if you would ask 13-year-old me, I'd have been like 71, that's old as shit. But like, but
especially like as my parents get close to that, it's like that can't be old.
That can't be that old. Yeah, so I do kind of understand that, but I won't lie. Like, in full transparency, it was a gut punch. I was shocked. And yeah, like the rational part of your brain like walks it back, and you're like, well, he's 71 years old. He was like an older dude. We know about his health problems throughout his life, which aren't exactly. There's not really a correlation per se, but it's like, you watch him walk around you go to any basketball game he was calling, you see him like hobbling around a little bit, and you're like, maybe it shouldn't have been that shocking, but it still was. And what's become even more crazy to me is that as the time, so it happens on Monday, we're recording this Wednesday, and in the last 48 plus hours, I feel like it's been like even more of a gut punch. Somehow, like the time that has gone by as I'm watching all the Bill Walton content, I'm just like, fuck, dude, like we're not, like this guy's, the sport's not going to have him anymore. Humanity's not going to have him anymore. I don't know. I feel like maybe part of me just took him for granted. I was always pro Bill Walton. Shame on anybody who wasn't. There was always a contingent of people that were like, I don't like him calling games. You were always wrong, and I hope you realize how wrong you were now. Yes. But yeah, like I always loved the man, but like for some reason I think it's like really set in how much I even took him for granted. And I said as a guy that like I didn't feel like I took him for granted when he was here. I felt like I loved him. I couldn't get enough of him, and yet everything that's come out in the last 48 hours, every story, every clip I see that's like, I see a lot of clips of him talking that were like recorded back in the day, or maybe even not that long ago. He's giving speeches at places. He's doing sit-down interviews for ESPN, whatever it is. I can't stop watching those. I can't also stop watching everybody talking about him, and not a single person has a bad word to say. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's all... Either here's this like very heartfelt, sentimental, time-consuming thing he did for me and my family, or here's this hilarious thing he did because he loves the game and he loves his job. It's just like nonstop positivity, and I think to your point, that's why it's hurt even more, is because it's just like magnified what we're going to be missing without him. The more I see about like what he was, is the more that's not going to be there going forward, and it kind of. Somebody replied to you when you tweeted about how much like you've just been soaking up Bill Walton content, and they said the only one I remember like this is Norm.
Yeah, Norm was the same for me. Yeah,
after he went, and you're just like, I need to watch every like late night interview with Letterman. I need to watch every clip of stand up, and it's just like, oh, that he was so wholly unique that you're like, no one's going to have that exact sense of humor. And with Walton, it's like no one's going to have that exact perspective and kind of stream of consciousness perspective on everything, even as he's supposed to be announcing a game. And it just, it hurts to see that exit.
He was so perfect in that nobody has ever been that good at basketball and also that eccentric of a personality. Like, it doesn't, I guess Shaq Barkley would be close.
But there's so much more. They're like, in a weird way, they're a little more understated, and they can focus on a topic. Like, you could ask Bill about, all right, what was your favorite Pac-12 game from this past year? And he ends up telling you about like his trip to the Joshua Tree in 2014. You're like, all right, not sure how we got here, but I just kind of loved that.
There are, through the years, the athlete personalities emerge, and there are guys that are fun characters in sports, obviously. But to have him be such a character, but also at the same time be one of the greatest basketball players that ever lived. Second best college basketball player ever, probably. I don't know. College doesn't really seem to do the GOAT thing as much as the NBA people do.
Am I being?
Is it because
who's is Lou as?
I would say Kareem. Yeah,
Kareem.
Lou Alcindor.
Okay,
Yeah.
but yeah,
but
I mean,
you could disagree. I don't.
Right.
Well,
Alex Caravan's going to unseat him when he wins 4 titles.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's.
Sorry, I didn't mean to like say it as a matter of fact. You can have your own.
No, I was like, there's
Caitlin Clark
obvious.
for you. Is it Caitlin Clark?
No.
Caitlin Clark over.
No, it's not. But I was talking to my dad this morning. I'm sure you probably talked to your dad a little about it too. And he said like maybe probably one of the or the best, and I was like, yeah, I don't have a whole lot of issue with that. He probably played the best national title game anyone's ever played.
Yeah,
it's pretty convincingly with his 21 for 22 performance. But yeah, to transition from that to also like loving the game, and I guess as lovers of college basketball, you and I, it's cool that somebody that well thought of also loved basketball and like poured his heart into it and like would tell anybody who'd listen how much he loved it, and you could hear it when he's on a late night call with Dave Pasch, and that just kind of like always hit home with me because it's like, oh, he loves it as much as I do. That's cool. Yeah,
right. Great ambassador for the sport. Yeah, and just an incredible personality and just so positive. And I think that's something I didn't really – I think that's like really hitting home for me the last couple of days is it at a time, a sports media landscape where – and I'm just as guilty as this as anyone else. We're all just kind of – I don't mean to lump you in here. I'll remove Jim from this, but I'm certainly in it, is we're all just kind of assholes, and we're all just like a little – cynical about things and a little I brought up like Shaq, Barkley, and Walton seem to be like the 3 guys that come to mind for me that are like crazy personalities, just like goofy fun personalities, but also were all-time great, like top 50 players of all time, whatever. But the dichotomy between like watching Shaquille O'Neal talking about basketball and Bill Walton, where like Shaq is just tearing dudes down left and right, and Bill Walton's like, I don't give a fuck, dude. I'm not here to like, I don't need to rip this guy down to preserve my legacy. I don't need to. It's just full positivity at all times. He didn't care about being right. How often do we fall into that trap where it's like, I think I think's overrated. I think UConn's overrated, and then UConn wins a national championship, and you're like, yeah, but no, I wasn't wrong. What happened was like Bill Walton didn't do that shit.
He would call the Pac-12 the Conference of Champions for 24 years.
Yeah.
They hadn't won since Arizona, like 96 or something like that. And
but he wasn't like argumentative about it. He wasn't like I don't know. He's just he just goes by the beat of his own drum, and it was so refreshing, and I'm going to miss that the most, is that it's just a landscape. And I include myself in this, of just like people like fighting and like wanting to be right, because that's the most important thing in media, is just to be right. And like his approach was, I don't care if I'm right, wrong, or anything else. I just want to like bring positivity and excitement and love and a celebration to the sport that I care about. And that always stood out to me. The other thing about him that everybody got wrong, and I always thought that was not everybody, but the people that didn't like Walton on the calls of games, what they got wrong was like there was a misunderstanding, I guess, or like there's a feeling that Bill Walton was always a step or two behind what was going on, because like he had like an aloofness that like he's not really watching the game, and he's living in his own world, and he's not. And I feel like the misconception was that he was like a step or two behind what was happening because he was in his own brain. When the reality is, if you like really paid attention to what Bill Walton was talking about, he was like 3 or 4 steps ahead of everybody at all times. And he was very smart, very sharp. And he could, and in fact he would at various times when he's calling games with passion, he's taking his shirt off and eating cupcakes and fucking rubbing dirt on him and doing whatever else he's doing. There would be times every so often where Pasch was like, let's get back on the game. And Walton would be like, fine, back on the game. This. Now, can we shut the fuck up, Dave, and go back to the dirt?
Yeah,
and like
exactly.
he would just like pop in to remind you, like, I know more than all of you. I am very smart. I'm not doing this because I'm stupid. I'm doing this because like I'm over here on like a different plane. And yeah, like sometimes it was eccentric and crazy, and sometimes you just want to turn on a game and watch UCLA or Arizona play basketball, and you got a guy with the shirt off banging a drum and doing all that, and that is a little bit of a fever dream. But
that's why he was best doing like games that weren't of massive national significance. Like if it was top 10 UCLA versus top 10 Arizona, and he's talking about random stuff, that's when people I think would start to get perturbed. It's like, all right, Arizona's up 15 on Oregon State. We know who's going to win this. I want to hear Bill Walton talk about going to a Grateful Dead concert in Corvallis and what he thought of that.
Yeah.
Like,
I want to hear about everything, everything he did. I want to hear it all.
And to your intelligence point, like I kind of think of it, you can't be as good a passer as he was without the game being like kind of slow for you. And so there's no way when he watched, he's like, oh, I don't know where these guys are going. Like he knew where guys are going before they did, and that's why he was such a great like anticipatory passer. And that's why I almost feel like
credit. I almost feel like he was bored by, not bored in like not like in a cynical like these guys suck way, but I almost feel like he was. That's why he would talk about other stuff during games, is because if there was like not a great game, he was just like I know I'm seeing this on a completely different level. So like I'm just gonna go over here and talk about what I want to talk about, because if you actually want me to talk about this game, I will bore you to tears. Whereas I don't know. I always felt like the way people would talk about Walton was that he was stupid or something. And that's so he's like one of the brightest guys that's ever played basketball. And you actually like pay attention to what he's saying, even when he's going on his tangents. They are goofy and crazy and so out of place, and yet if you actually like type out the words, like read the quote, like read the things he's saying, it actually tracks. If you actually like go back and like fucking fact check like stuff he's saying or whatever, they're like he'll like name drop like a restaurant in Belgium that he visited one time, and you think he's just saying nonsense, but if you actually look it up, I'll be goddamned, it's right there on that street he said it was on, and it was in the founding of they do serve the things he said they served. And, and he's recalling some story from 1967 or something, and he's on top of everything. And I don't know, I'm gonna miss that like crazy. He is irreplaceable and was one of one, and that's the part that sucks, is like guys that are irreplaceable. There could never be another Bill Walton, because you can have a guy who has like a similar personality, but then we'll just think of him as an insane person. If there's a guy, there are probably a lot of guys out. You can find a lot of them at Grateful Dead concerts. Yeah, that would come and talk to you about ayahuasca and fucking the virtues.
Put a mic in front of them during a basketball game, and they could do that tangent.
Right, but they don't have the credibility of being one of the greatest players of all time. And then you can find a lot of the greatest players of all time, and they're frankly just boring personalities, and they don't have the interest of
or to your point,
perspective.
Cynical, where like some of the former players, there's one specific name I'm thinking of here, but that do a lot of color commentary on ESPN, that spend most of their time complaining about what the sport is and how they don't enjoy watching this aspect, and like you said, like that, I don't want to watch that. I'm trying to enjoy this, and that's not going to grow following if somebody's saying how bad the thing they're watching is. And Walton just conveys joy while he's watching it, no matter what you like, whether you liked him doing games or not. He loved what he was doing, and that came through every time.
That's one of the cooler things too the last couple of days is everyone's story. Everybody that's telling stories about everyone has their one or two Bill Walton stories, and they always paint the man as who you see on TV. It's always there's not one person that's come out and been like, so my Bill Walton experience, kind of a dick, or like never, it doesn't even have to be that strong. Just like, I don't know, I met him one time. He just seemed kind of normal. It was weird.
He was
like
forgettable.
He was just kind of very forgettable. Nobody has that story. Everybody's like, yeah. So let me tell you a story about Bill Walton, and they'll crack their knuckles and they're like, there was one time, and then they just talk for like 20 minutes, and I'm like locked in on everything they're saying, and it's like the wildest thing you've ever heard. And if you or I did any of these things, it would be like the singular most interesting thing we've ever done in our lives. And it's seemingly everybody that crossed paths with Bill Walton has one of these stories, and I'm listening to all this and I'm like, what a life, dude, that this guy just seemingly every day had a story like this, and he was just very genuine with all of it. And I think there was that was maybe I'm attacking Strawman here, but it did feel like there was a sense at times that, like, not that he was hamming it up for the camera, but just that he was just like an annoying guy, or like he was but that was just who he is. Like I think when you cut through some of the eccentric stuff, you realize it's just a dude that like genuinely loved life, and every day of his life he approached it with the same attitude. And those of us that would turn on ESPN at 11 Eastern on weeknights to catch Pac-12 basketball games, we were lucky enough to get like a 2-hour glimpse into his life. But then as soon as those cameras turn off, he's still going to go do that, like at the restaurant after the game. He's going to do that the next morning as he's eating his breakfast. He's going to do that everywhere he goes, and through that, he's going to touch so many people and so many, and just like have an impact on so many people to where it is irreplaceable. And it sucks that, I feel I'm a guy who appreciated Bill Walton when he's alive, and yet I still just have like an immense sense of taking him for granted. That this kind of came out of nowhere to me, and I know the Pac-12 was dying already, and that's an observation everyone had, that he went out at the same time the Pac-12 and all that, and I don't really know what the plan was going to be for him moving forward in broadcasting, but I'm gonna miss him like crazy because I just want him in my life in some way. I just wanted him.
I'm confident he would have found a niche. Like
he would have,
they would have put him on late night, Big 12 games or those Big 10 ones when the teams are playing out west, and he would have been like lamenting the death of the Conference of Champions, and those late night games will feel a little emptier. Let me ask you this: Do you have one of your own, a Bill Walton story at all? I know you've interacted a little bit.
I've met him like 3 or 4 times, but never. I have a problem in general with feeling. You're gonna be my therapist here for a second, Jim. I have a problem in general with feeling like I'm not in everyone's way. I don't like meeting celebrities or people I look up to. Great example. I just went to the Indy 500 this weekend. David Letterman is top 3 heroes of mine, maybe top 1. Like I'd have to really sit down and think about it in terms of David Letterman is I worship the ground that guy walks on. I had an opportunity to meet David Letterman at the Indy 500, and I turned it down because I was like, the one thing I know about David Letterman more than anything else is he doesn't want to meet bozos like me. And I was like, I think, and so I say that to say, like, I've had a couple opportunities to meet Bill Walton, but it was always like a quick, like, I'm sorry, sir. I'm so fucking sorry for bothering you. I know you have so many more interesting people to talk to than me. You have so much more interesting shit to do than talk to me. I just want to shake your hand. I'm out of here. You won't see me again. Like that was. But I will say the one thing I remember when Tate and I were doing the show, we had him record a just like a bumper thing and we played it a few times when we would do shows from Maui where it's like Bill Walton going, "This is Big Wave Billy." The prompt was, we want you to, will you please just talk in this microphone real quick and say, "This is Bill Walton and you're listening to Titus and Tate." And of course, by the time he agreed to do it, he talks for like seemingly 2 minutes, but like he's like the one guy that is long-winded and nobody cares because it's like, dude, you could have made that 45 minutes. We would have played the whole thing on the show. So he does a thing for us, but before he did, we just said, "Could you say just all we need you to say is, 'This is Bill Walton, you're listening to Titus and Tate.'" That's it. And he just looks at us and he goes, "You guys aren't like a porn thing, are you?" And we go, "No." And he goes, "All right." And that was the only background check he did on us, was just a verbal, you guys aren't porn or anything, are you?" And we're like, "No, we're not porn." And he's like, "Cool, I'll do it." And then he's like, he called himself Big Wave Billy, and he's like, "Shine on, Maui on." I forget the whole thing. I gotta hit up Tate and get the.
Was this in the Civic Center?
Yeah. This was like 20 minutes before the first game tipped off.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and he just was sitting there, and we were like, "Yeah, fuck it, we're gonna go try it to see if he'll just say it real quick." So that was pretty much the only. But that cracked me up. You guys aren't porn, are you?
It's unbelievable. To your point of him being long-winded, he was at the USBWA Awards last year. I did not get to attend, but Kai, who's been on your show, fellow 3-man weave guy, he was there, just kind of taking it in, seeing. I forget, like, this wasn't the year Zach Edey. I guess Zach Edey was there. He was National Player of the Year last year. But the big featured thing is, all right, Bill Walton's going to be on stage, get interviewed. Like, we have an hour block for this. One question, he talks for an hour. Like, there's another guy on stage with him as the interviewer, and he's just up there, like, enjoying it.
Have you seen the Lebitard clip that I saw going around last couple of days, that Lebitard, before they had Walton on, they did an over-under of 1.5 questions that they will ask during the segment. No. And he comes on the show, and I think it was Stugatz. Stugatz just says something, and then Walton responds to it and talks the entire segment.
So zero questions.
And so then they say goodbye to Bill. They end the segment, and then they go, "All right, let's go with the over-under." It was 0. They asked 0 questions. They just had him on the show for a whole segment.
Unbelievable.
0 questions were asked, and he carried the whole thing. And like I said, it's crazy because if you or I did that, we we'd never have a future in this business again.
Yeah,
but
I'd
Bill
be like,
Walton,
I'm so sorry for rambling. Like,
yeah, but when Bill Walton does it, you're like, dude, I could have listened to you for hours. I could have done this for hours. Maybe I don't know if this is the last thing. I almost said the last thing I had, but this is another thing I thought about is and watching clips the last couple of days, the reverence he had for John Wooden was doing a number on me the last couple of days. Where like I don't want to sound like I'm 1,000 years old, but there was like during this era of college basketball, everything's changing. And again, I don't want to do what you said. You know, I don't want to be the old guy that's like things are different. I don't like it. This sport sucks. But like it's a changing landscape of college basketball and transfers and all that. And to like see clips of Walton talking about what his coach meant to him and telling stories about like how he shows up with shaggy hair and John Wooden says, you know, get your hair cut, and he says, you can't tell me what to do. And he's like, you're right, I can't tell you, but I can decide who's going to play, and we're going to miss you. I think that's the line. It's like, we're going to miss you, Bill. And he goes and gets his hair cut, and like he just listening to all that makes me like nostalgic for a time that I wasn't even around for. It just like makes me I don't know. To see a player of his caliber have such a reverence for his coach, and I don't mean to say that like that doesn't happen in college basketball anymore, but it feels like that sort of relationship is rarer and rarer, and maybe that's just because I'm getting old and like, you know, it just happens.
Part of it because like I know you love Thad, like you have the same, not maybe the exact same kind of reverence for him, but you're like I that's my coach.
Yeah.
So that maybe you connect with that on some level.
No, it is. That's exactly what it is. Like the way he talks about John Wooden, I would talk about Thad Matta. I would do anything for him. I fucking love the man. I love him to his core. And I feel like that's how a lot of the guys that played for him feel. And again, I don't want to say that doesn't happen anymore. And there are certainly coaches that still, you know, have that relationship with their players. But that's the part of when people bitch about the transfer portal. We're not saying like we don't want players to have agency of their own lives and we don't want all that. It's that like when you see a guy like Bill Walton talking about what John Wooden means to him, and this is well after he played for him, and then he starts talking about the relationship he has with him for the rest of Wooden's life. That kind of like underscores the type of thing that you want to see, or at least I do, that I want to see in college basketball. And that's the sort of stuff that like makes me keep coming back. And there are instances of that. And you see it with Tom Izzo every so often. When Jay Wright was great at it, and Tony Bennett, like all I don't mean to say that doesn't exist, but the cynical part of your mind looks around at the landscape and you're like, fuck, dude, this sucks. Like if it's hard to like hear that story and think like, man, Bill Walton in 2024, John Wooden tells him to get his hair cut. He's probably like, well, I'm transferring, you know, and like that's where my mind goes. I'm like, damn, that sucks. So it's like refreshing to hear a guy be like, yeah, I kind of butted heads with my coach, but then he made me a better man, and he made me, he taught me everything I know about how to conduct my affairs on the basketball court, off the basketball court. Yeah, I identified with that, and I am obviously not even close to being of Bill Walton's caliber of a player, but like that sort of relationship, I don't know, that meant a lot to me. And then like watching the last couple of days, like seeing again, I've clicked on literally everything I've seen, everything Bill Walton. I will watch it again and again and again. He was just like a one-of-one man, and like he the talent he had, but also the personality and how kind he was to people. And
yeah,
it's crazy.
I got one small little story I'll throw on too, is, you know, I went to Maui in 2019. You were, you know, the figurehead of Maui coverage out there. You and Tate, that's right.
Yeah, something
but
like that.
I got there a little early, and I went and did the Road to Hana on Maui, which for people who haven't been there, it's this long, kind of arduous drive around one side of the island. You go very slowly. There's a lot of like cars can only go one way, but you do a little bit of hiking. You see some beaches. It's a long day. You get back at like 10 hours later. I'm like sweaty. I'm in a swimsuit and a tank top, and I kind of sneak into the Civic Center gym. BYU's practicing, and Bill's there talking to Mark Pope and hanging out with the team. And at some point I just kind of like get over like, Bill, I'm a big fan. And like, what you were saying about Letterman, like he doesn't love meeting people, like Walton, anybody that wanted to talk to him, he's like, yeah, I got time for you. Like he turned, had a conversation with me. He insisted that we get a picture. And after the first one, he's like, I don't think that was good enough. Gave the, like, you know how girls are like, let me know if that's not good enough.
Yeah.
And you're never going to say no.
Yeah.
He was like, we're redoing that picture. I was like, you're you're a king. Like,
he's
generous.
He
with
treated
his time.
he treated you like he would have treated Coach K if Coach K was asking for a picture.
And he didn't like. I was credentialed media for that event, but I wasn't wearing that.
Yeah,
I looked like a bum who had wandered in, and he was awesome.
It's crazy. I mean, I don't want to overstate it. I really feel like Bill Walton makes me want to be a better person, and that's fucking crazy.
That's
to
what
say
he'd want.
about
That's what he'd want.
It's crazy
to
say about a guy who's a college basketball commentator, but it's true, and I won't lie. Like I'm completely honest. Like I have, in the last few days, like I've honestly, and again, this is putting it on too thick, but I honestly, like, part of me just like sits in a room alone, and I'm just like, what the fuck am I doing with my life, dude? You hear all these stories about this guy, and you're like, I haven't even done one. Like I said, like if someone told one story about me, of one of the many thousands they tell about Bill Walton, if that was like my one story, it was like, I'll tell you how nice Titus was. He once upon a time did this, and that was like the only nice thing I ever did. I would feel like I'm a pretty good person, and he did this every day of his life. It's an immense loss, and yeah.
My gimmick for this today was going to be, I was going to come in and have like two different Bill Walton stories and make you guess which one was true, but all of them were going to be true.
All of them are true.
It's just going to be like, yeah, they're all
just
true. He's the best. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off your sentimentality there, but
it's probably best that you did, because I'd start crying about.
When you texted me about coming on, I was like, I might cry.
I might, dude. I don't know. I don't know what it is, because again, he was kind of older, but I think like that maybe as I'm getting older, like I realize that fuck it, I don't want. We'll start saying shit that I don't need to say, but yeah, I'm gonna miss him like crazy, and I think the sport's worse without him in it. I think the world is worse without him in it, and that does seem crazy to say, but I think the things that you've seen from people the last couple of days reflect that, and everybody that knew him best had nothing but great things to say about him, and yeah. Another thing I guess I'll point out is he doesn't get enough credit for being an all-time legend and having a son who is good at basketball.
That's true.
At a time when Bronny James is being shoved down our throats as a legitimate NBA prospect, Bill Walton was a top 50 player in NBA history and had a son who had a long NBA career and is coaching in the NBA. And
Luke did he win a title at Arizona? I can't remember.
No, I think he was on the team right after the 97 team. I think he was on the 01 team.
Yeah,
sure.
So he did not win one as a.
I think he might have been on the 03.
But he won 2 NBA titles and one as an assistant coach. So that's kind of royalty.
I just thought about that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Legends don't have sons that can play, really. That's why like Bronny being good or Bronny being like kind of good has everybody losing their minds though, one way or another. But yeah, Bill Walton is a top 50 guy, and his son is, yeah. Bronny, I guess we can pivot away from Walton. Pivot to Bronny. Bronny is officially not coming back to college. He is staying in the draft. He's going to go lottery, I guess. Where's he gonna go? He should not be drafted. But Rich Paul, I saw. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do Bronny because I hate doing it. But also, like, it is a fascinating story. It's a I'm talking in circles. If there was a guy that was not related to LeBron James that had a heart attack or like had his heart explode before a season and then played college basketball, barely played, but was kind of okay at certain times, but was never really good, but then like was sort of athletic, but he's also 6'1", and he enters the draft, and then the combine is like, I don't know, he wasn't bad, but he certainly didn't jump off the screen at us. But now there are teams talking about they might draft him. But now his agent's saying,
like, every agent and writer is putting out these like super positive Bronny spins,
and they're saying that he's only going to he's only going to work out for a few teams because he's handpicking where he wants to go, kind of, and all that. That is objectively fascinating. It's a fascinating story. Yeah, I can't wait to see where it goes next, because I don't think any team actually wants Bronny James. I think the teams that want Bronny James want his father, which is not nothing. That is a reason to draft Bronny James, I think, but also Bronny James is not a reason to draft Bronny James.
No, not at this point. Does it give you any sort of edge for like LeBron also pushing Bryce somewhere later? Because Bryce can hoop and I think is a little more NBA caliber than Bronny at this point.
Yeah.
So maybe you're like, oh, I've curried good favor with the
I don't know.
James
I'm
family.
at a point now because I having experienced the Bronny James machine at work this year. I'm at a point now where there's just no credibility out of the LeBron James camp, the James family camp. There's no, I can't believe anything that they're selling anymore because I didn't think Bronny was going to stay in the draft, which is kind of stupid, but I thought like
that might be the most naive thing you've
that's
had.
very naive of
yeah,
me.
you
but
thought he was going to go to Duquesne?
I thought he was going to. I don't know what I thought because I just can't envision a reality where like people are actually going to draft him. I can't envision like, and I get that you're going to get LeBron but like, what are you saying as a franchise that like we're going to just fucking sign LeBron or something? Just like I don't like but again, maybe that's naive because LeBron James does run the entire league and the impact he has on the league is crazy. But
yeah, I mean, my favorite team signs Thanasis Antetokounmpo every single offseason as a nugget to have Giannis. Yeah,
you're right. I'm naive.
I would not be excited if my team drafted Bronny James unless it truly guaranteed LeBron. But
even then, it's like just LeBron's like almost 40. He's great. He's still a great player. I don't mean to say he's washed at all. He's still a great player. It's just like. This is the fucking NBA, dude. Like, what links are we going to? Because the Bucks didn't sign Thanasis to keep.
Yeah, they didn't sign him first.
They didn't sign him to keep Giannis. They didn't sign him to get Giannis. They signed him just to like make Giannis happy, which makes sense after Giannis is already there. So like, if the Lakers were to draft Bronny, I think it feels a little different.
Yes,
but. Yeah, if the Pacers draft Bronny because they're like, we think we're going to be able to sign LeBron.
This is going to work.
It's fucking insane. And I just picked the Pacers because they're the first team that came to mind. But yeah, I don't know. But it is objectively fascinating. And as much as I pretend like I hate talking about it, like it's a very unique thing because like this doesn't come along every NBA draft. A guy who's like everybody privately is like, yeah, he can't play. We don't want to draft him.
Yeah,
but they're also like. Publicly like we're interested.
the tweets like trying to make a case for him as good are like he tested pretty well athletically. Mm-hmm. He made some shots in the workout, which everybody does. And
yeah.
It's just like how far can we stretch this? It's too thin. I'm ready for it to not be a college thing anymore as a college hoops guy. But I guess when Bryce comes along, we'll see it again.
All right, let's talk about some college hoop stuff. Big decision so far today is Alex Caravan. Probably that's the one. He's back at UConn. So UConn's gonna win the national championship.
Yeah. Are you at where it just doesn't matter who they have? Like I've just kind of surrendered to Dan Hurley, Luke Murray, Kamani Young.
Yeah, certainly
will ruin my tournament every year.
Certainly before the season starts. Yeah. Like if they obviously start sucking. They do have a very long leash as a program at this point, right?
Yes.
They have I don't even care what the roster looks like. I'm going into next season believing that UConn is a top 10 team. Yeah, if they start 5-7, I might reassess. I'm not gonna like sit there. I'm not gonna watch like a horrible season unfold and just be like, just wait till March. They're gonna pull it together. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and assume that as of right now, yeah, they're national champion. They're going to be the national champion next year.
3 in a row. They'll win every game by 15 plus, and we'll all talk ourselves into teams beating them. And it'll never happen. Yeah, great.
Okay, so with that in mind, like, is UConn a villain? I was toying with this idea during the NCAA tournament, and naturally UConn fans were like, "Now, hang on a second. Why are you getting ahead of yourself and saying we're the bad guy already?" I don't mean to do that. I'm just trying to like have a little bit of a conversation that
already
it's fascinating. You think
they've won 5 in 25 years. But you're a villain.
They're so fun though. That was my argument. Was like that UConn is beating the fuck out of everybody, and it feels like people like it. It feels like the average college basketball fan. I don't think UConn is bad for college basketball. I think they're good for college. But I think people were like really into UConn. At least they were around here. I don't know if I guess we do have a big Northeast presence at this company, but it just feels like my finger on the pulse of college basket. Like everyone cheers for their team, and if you're playing UConn, you're obviously cheering against UConn, whatever. But for a team that is beating the fuck out of everybody, it did feel weirdly like they weren't hated as much as they should be.
Yeah, I guess in terms of it is a huge program, well-known, has solid history, at least in the last quarter century. And people can identify with that, and it's like, wow, we are witnessing greatness. This is incredible. And there was such a large subsection of people that didn't want Zach Edey to win.
Yeah,
so I
that's
think
probably part
UConn
of
was
it
the
too.
bastion of hope against Zach Edey, pummeling his way to a national title. So that probably helps UConn. For me, it was I felt no drama in the national or in the NCAA tournament at all.
Yeah.
This year, like last year, I started to feel it as they kept going. Like I saw them beat Gonzaga live, sitting next to John Fanta courtside in Vegas, and was like, oh yeah, this team's just way better than everyone. And this year, as they kept winning by double digits, I was like, no one's going to touch them. I want more, at least a chance of a Final Four game being close with them. They can't win by double digits again. They could win a third title, at least win one on a buzzer beater. That's all I want.
Give me some sense of excitement. But it is, but that's what I mean. Like it was like watching them beat the hell out of Illinois was fun. I'm sure you're a Missouri guy.
That 30 zip run was kind of fun.
That's what I mean. Like I what is it about them that, because if Duke does that, if Kentucky does that, if I guess it depends on the makeup of these teams. I don't know. Maybe that's not entirely true. But I do feel like if the traditional Blue Bloods were doing what UConn has done, we would all be so over it and we would hate them so much. But UConn was likable. I find myself cheering for UConn, and I think I'm at a point going into next season where I can no longer do that. It feels like we were excited for UConn to. There's this collection of Blue Bloods. UConn was getting pushed in to like break up the party, and everyone that's a fan of a not Blue Blood team was like, yeah, go represent us. Go break up the party.
As long as it's not them.
And there's like a belief that like UConn was going to join the Blue Bloods and then turn around and let all of us in. But really, I think what's happening is they're joining the Blue Bloods, turning around, flipping us off. They're flipping off all the Blue Bloods. They're just going to keep going, and the plan is falling apart. I don't think this makes this doesn't make me as an Ohio State fan like more optimistic about us following their path. This makes me like, fuck, we got another one to worry about now. Like, I was just worried about Carolina and Duke and Kentucky. Now I'm worried about UConn.
This is like a humans versus machine war. We created this weapon that's going to beat the machines, and then they're like, oh wait, now they're also subjugating us too.
Yes.
And all right, great. Why did we build this in the first place?
So anyway, that's where we're headed. Alex Karaban coming back to UConn. This draft is so hard because it does stink to where part of me thinks that everybody's going to stay in the draft, so guys coming back is a little bit surprising. But I also just said that I expected Bronny to come. I didn't really expect Bronny to come back. I feel weird. I feel weird about saying that because I didn't.
He's not really in the same boat as other guys that are like, are they good enough to play in the pros? Like he's kind of above that discussion.
He's got his own separate thing going on.
Yeah.
But Karaban, I expect everybody to stay in the draft because this is the draft to do it, and I think Alex Karaban will eventually see an NBA court a little bit. I don't know what I mean by that. He's way too good of a shooter. He's so big. He's got such a high IQ.
He tested poorly athletically, but I've watched that guy like block jump shots. At the Final Four, I'm like, he's a good defender. So I don't
at this point, if I was an NBA team, I would just get all the UConn guys in the last couple of years.
Do the Villanova thing.
Yeah.
Just Villanova Knicks. Like just throw
the Knicks.
Hey, these teams dominate everybody. Let's see what they do on a professional
court. Holy shit!
They
dominate everyone in college. Now they're playing together, and yep, they're good. They're good together still at the NBA level. I mean, speaking of Villanova, Eric Dixon is back for his 8th year. Isn't it funny looking back on Perry Ellis that we made jokes about him being at Kansas forever and he was a 4-year player and did it, I don't want to say the right way, but like the traditional way, I guess would be the way to say that. He did it he played as a freshman, he played as a sophomore, he played as a junior, he played as a senior.
He didn't have a COVID year and floated the draft a ton.
Okay, that was my 4 years, I'm out. And then everyone was like, God damn, you were there forever. And then now
What do you make of Villanova? Because it feels, if they didn't get Dixon back, it would have felt like the most kind of dead man walking scenario. Like last year had a very strong roster, and now there's such a swing on the opinion on Kyle Neptune, and like we are 4 years removed from Jay Wright having that thing like top 10 every single year, just pen them in.
Yeah,
and now are they going to make the tournament under Kyle Neptune ever? Maybe not.
I don't. I was going to say this is a big year for Kyle Neptune, but I think the big year for Kyle Neptune was last year, and I think the die is cast, and I think he's got to do. I think the expectation is now like the way he undoes what he's done so far is he has to go to like basically a Final Four. He has to win the Big East. He has to
what's the save yourself season? Like did he have Brad Brownell season last year at Clemson? Make the Elite Eight as like a 6 seed. That probably
I think he can save his job with less than that, but to save or to like change the narrative, if that's how we want to put it, to like get guys like you and I to be like, oh, maybe we're wrong about Kyle Neptune. Maybe he does know what the hell he's doing. He's gonna have to do a lot.
Yeah,
he's gonna have to do a lot.
Maybe the better comparison is Hubert, guy who takes over for the legend with very little experience, no experience in his case. Second year, ton of talent, high expectations, crashes and burns. But then in his third year, they win the ACC by, I think, 2, maybe 3 games.
Yeah.
They're a 1 seed. I know they lost to Alabama in the Sweet 16, but it all, that kind of repaired perception of him. Like, oh, yeah he can't coach.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe that's what Neptune
I am
means.
curious what Carolina I'm curious what all these teams are going to look like. That's just modern college basketball. It is. I have bemoaned the transfer portal at times and the changing landscape of the sport and all that. The one little sliver that I find interesting, I should say, is I wouldn't say it's good, bad, or anything else, but it is interesting. Is I have no idea what a lot of these teams are going to look like. Like I know what the rosters are going to look like. I don't know how good they're going to actually be. John Calipari is at Arkansas. He's landing a bunch of dudes. John L. Davis and DJ Wagner and Big Z and
Davis just came out of the draft today, so there's another look at you, just hitting the news.
I know. So all of these guys, it's like, all right, well he's got an interesting team as we expect him to. He always has an interesting team. Arkansas, yeah, they could be good, but also I've seen John Calipari with a lot of talent before. It doesn't work out. Yeah, I'm fascinated to see, and I guess that's the interesting part of there are no certainties next year. There are no, I guess Kansas and Bama would be like the 2 teams that you're like, I feel pretty confident they're going to be.
I think Houston
would be up
floor
there.
Is super, super high. With
UConn, I'm giving the benefit of the doubt, but if I'm being completely honest, like I don't know if their jersey said something else and Dan Hurley wasn't the coach, I don't know if I'd feel that way about UConn.
Definitely not.
Yeah, you're just giving Dan Hurley the benefit of the doubt. So but as far as like teams that you can look at, like the continuity and being like, all right, so we kind of know what that team's going to look like, and therefore I think that they're a top 5 team. I don't really feel that way about anyone but Kansas and Bama, basically.
Yeah, I think that should embolden people in the preseason to have controversial, not even controversial, but bolder opinions. Like,
take some swings.
I think this team is good. Maybe you don't, but I'm really into this roster. I think it kind of structures together well on one end, yada yada. And if someone's going to go out on that limb, like if you came in here and you were like, Jim, I am all in on Jake Diebler, the way he rebuilt Ohio State this offseason, Aaron Bradshaw, second year is going to be a monster. I can't be like, you're an idiot.
You're an idiot. Yeah, because you don't.
I have no evidence.
You don't know. Yeah, none of us know.
Yeah, I'm gonna
Indiana.
have to be like, well, later I'll call you an idiot. If you're wrong.
Yeah, right. Indiana's a great example of that too. Indiana is it the Rorschach test? Is that the one that's like blobs?
Yes,
that's the one that you just like say everyone sees something different when they look at it. All right, good.
What do you see when you look at
I was about to say good job, Mark, good
Hoosier
reference, but I also like I think when you make references, you're supposed to just make them and keep it going, not bring the conversation to a grinding halt saying, am I right on that? Yeah, what do you see when you see Indiana? It's like, I mean, they've killed it in the transfer portal, but also, like we said, like going into last year, Indiana had the names, Indiana had the roster, Indiana had the stars next to recruits they were bringing in, and it just like was a mismatched. They were also like turning to Trey Galloway saying like, can you be Kyrie Irving for us? And Trey Galloway's like, what?
Excuse me?
What are you asking me to do?
There's at least, I think, some more logic to the Indiana roster construction this year, where last year is like, let's just grab a guy and a name and put them together. There's some more shooting. I'm not going to say that team is flush with shooting at this point, but they at least made the effort. Like Luke Goody is a guy who is known as a shooter.
A shooter, yeah.
You bring him in. Miles Rice can make some jump shots. Cannon Carlisle, the Stanford transfer they got, can make jump shots. Last year, they wouldn't even take them. They'd take like 10 threes a game. They'd make 2, and it'd be like, all right, they got outscored from the three-point line by 25 or 24.
Yeah.
That doesn't make 25.
20,
divisible by 3.
Hard. Yeah, that'd be hard. That'd be hard
but this team, at least, like they could shoot 23s a game, and it's not from horrendous shooters the whole time. So maybe there's upside. And Woodson's another guy. Is he year 3, right?
This is year 4.
Year 4, yeah.
He had 2 tournaments in a row, and then last year
That's right.
Yeah.
He probably needs to show a little more of maximizing roster.
I think IU fans, not all of them turned on him this year, but I felt like that was a little The thing with Woodson at IU is like he was never going to be the savior. He was supposed to be the guy that holds down the fort before the savior shows up. Now the reason like last year was a the reason there was panic last year was, one, that they had all the talent and it just didn't work out, and the roster was weird, and like all the things you just said. But also, it felt like this was everybody knows that he's there temporarily to then bring in the savior. And with Dusty May going to Michigan, it felt like there's like a sense of urgency around Bloomington with like a coaching carousel that was very active and all of that. That I think people got a little carried away with saying like Woodson's a bozo, get him out of here, because I mean the goal at Indiana is not to just make the tournament, but that is the base. Like, they didn't make the tournament for 4 years when Archie Miller was there, and Woodson made 2 tournaments in a row, and that's not to say like build a statue for the guy, but like it's gonna be a process to like build the thing back up. And yeah, they took a step back last year, but I don't know, like some of the vibes out of Bloomington at times last year, I was like, everybody relax, just chill out. Like, you're having one bad year. It's not even, and the year wasn't even that bad. Like, they had some, the valleys were really bad, but they played well at times. They came on late last year.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I'm now in a position going into IU season next year where it's like, if I look at the roster and I look at the players that they have, yeah, part of me wants to say they're going to win the Big Ten, and part of me wants to say that that's a top 10 team. That's a bona fide top 10 team, but also, I don't know how I can confidently say that after last year when it does a lot of similar vibes.
Yeah, and even like the team that was the 4 seed, Trace Jackson Davis, National Player of the Year candidate, they were, not to get all analytics, but they were 30th in KenPom. This wasn't some team that was like emphatically smashing teams all the way up at the top of the country through advanced stat stuff. So can he take what I very much think is a good roster that kind of fits? Can he get that to that top 15 level and kind of achieve what generally I think the perception is capable with this roster, what they're capable
of? Who was is there a transfer that surprised you? Is there a transfer that it's hard to be surprised in modern college basketball, but is there was there a decision? What's like an off-season decision where you're just like, didn't that I won't lie, that one surprised me a little bit.
The Riley Kugel saga was really odd to me. Coming into last year, almost everyone's darling breakout candidate. I think the final 10 games of 2023, he averaged like 17 a game. It seemed written in stone that he was going to be a star for the Gators last year at Florida, and it just didn't quite work out. The on-court stuff didn't work out. They brought in some other transfers that were just, more fitting to Golden's scheme, and then enters the portal. Everybody sees the talent. He puts out a list of the teams that there's some argument whether it's the ones he wanted versus the ones that had contacted him, but it's like Kansas, Duke, etc. It's like, oh, wow, this guy, everybody wants him. Commits to Kansas. Rumors he doesn't get in. Ends up in Mississippi State. It's kind of an odd swing. He's back in the SEC. That one was weird. Just the whole cycle of it.
I don't get how guys don't. Florida's a good school.
Yeah.
How do you not get into Kansas? I don't mean to say Kansas is a bad school. You got your
the worst.
Mizzou.
It's the worst school. Sorry,
your
Jayhawks,
Mizzou,
but it's the worst.
Quarter zip on there. You can say it all you want. But yeah, I was confused by that with like Caleb Love too. I was like, North Carolina is not a bad school, and he couldn't get into Michigan, which is a good. I don't know. Yeah. The admissions process of these schools is which I don't want this to be the conversation, but that's why I continue to believe like eventually. Fuck it, I don't want to do that. But I do think eventually the programs and the schools are gonna split from each other because of shit like that, of like guys like Bill Self probably was not happy that he had a chance to get a good player. And
yeah, I mean, you could say lost Juwan Howard his job with like Terrence Shannon and Caleb Love, like year after year, these guys that are trying to get in. It sounded like upperclassmen have a much harder time getting into Michigan. Yeah. So yeah, that seemed like an issue for them. It, like I said, cost Howard his job, and it's not going to cost Bill Self his job. The team's still going to be top 3 going into next year by pretty much anyone you ask. But
that's become just like an interesting wrinkle with the transfer portal stuff. It's like one guy, seemingly every year now, one guy commits to a school and then doesn't actually get into the school, and then there's always the saga. And Kugel is the guy this year. What's Coleman Hawkins doing? Are we waiting? He's. I guess we're gonna find out later today. But that one's another weird saga. If he pulls out of the draft, has he pulled out yet? No,
not officially. I think common wisdom is he's going to be the 11:58 guy. Like right before the deadline, he's going to be.
Am I misremembering, or did he not like very loudly and proudly say, "I'm not transferring"? and
Yeah,
like I'm an Illinois guy. I saw him like tweeting, like people were putting out stats of like 4-year players that Brad Underwood's had at Illinois, and I think he if he's not the only one he's had, he's like one of the handful. And Coleman Hawkins, as I don't need to tell you, is very much like a personality and
yes,
and is not afraid to ruffle feathers here and there or whatever. So he was like kind of trolling on Twitter about like I'm not I don't know. I felt like the messaging coming from him is like I'm definitively not transferring. Like who knows what that's worth? Fucking Felix Akpara said I'm 100% committed to Buckeye Nation, and then transferred like 2 weeks later.
Yeah,
but
there were like 4 guys that released "I'm back" graphics
Yeah.
for their teams, and then
then ended up leaving. But
Yeah.
like the Coleman Hawkins thing is strange because even when he put his name in the portal, it seemed to be like, relax, Illinois fans, I'm just doing this to
keep my options open.
And we're like, what is going on though? Just say what you're doing. Like, what are you doing here? And this coming on, I don't want to say the immediate heels, but you know, when I think of Illinois basketball in the offseason, my mind goes to Kofi Coburn when he entered the draft, entered the transfer portal, and then ended up going back to Illinois, and then was like going to transfer, but then he's back at like maybe that's what Coleman Hawkins is going to end up doing. I don't know, but I don't. This is a new world where guys are like, I'm going to cast every single rod I have and see what fish are out there.
He has the widest range of outcomes of like any guy right now in terms of could stay in the draft, could go back to Illinois, could end up at basically any school. Like everybody, you know, he's a capable power conference starter for sure. So if he comes back, everybody's going to want him. I think Arkansas will probably be the one circling big time with Calipari, but we'll see.
Oh, that would be juicy. I don't want Cal to. I'm definitely over Cal in the sense of I'm done trusting him as a basketball coach, but I will never be over Cal as a content guy. I will always I never want John Calipari to retire. I want him every single year to be going into the season with a ton of with a retooled roster. I want that to be the Calipari story. Every single September is like John Calipari's got a retooled roster. He's in a position to do some serious damage.
I have 2 Arkansas questions for you. Is it funnier next year if they're better or worse than Kentucky? What works out more? Like, obviously Pope's got a pretty solid roster in the portal, but he left in kind of a harumph sort of way. Didn't really expect to leave, I think, and suddenly lands at Arkansas. Maybe it's funnier if Kentucky's better. Like, Big Blue Nation is never going to let him forget it.
I don't want either side to win to the divorce. So I don't know what my answer is. Like they're both like kind of nightmare scenario. Like Kentucky fans puffing their chest and saying we're better off without Cal. Like this was a blessing the whole time. I don't like that image. I love Mark Pope. Like I want Mark Pope to be very successful, but just maybe not right away. I don't want year one maybe Kentucky fans to be like, oh shit, dude, we're awesome. That's never a spot that I want to find myself in.
Let's humble them a little more. Okay.
But also John Calipari doing like a Conor McGregor walk out, you know, like a strut out to the Final Four with his first year at Arkansas. Like I don't need that in my life either.
Yeah. Oh, the amount of like those guys he'd do about Kentucky.
Yeah, dude. I don't
the shade he'd be throwing.
What's funnier? Maybe it is Cal. Maybe it's Cal. I mean, that is like his exit from Kentucky is pretty funny. Like Kentucky fans were like, fire this guy. We're done with him. Kentucky was like, Mitch was like, we're not going to fire him. We're going to bring him back. We had a long conversation with Cal. We're fine. He's our guy moving forward. And then Cal just bounces. He goes to a conference rival. Is crazy. And then he's running it back with Kenny Payne, Brad Calipari on staff.
Yeah, a bunch of Kentucky recruits. He brings DJ Wagner, brings Adu Tiero. It's like, all right, we're just going to be kind of Kentucky Southwest.
It's going to be, so he just kind of said, I'm going to do it at Fayetteville.
All right, so then speaking of Fayetteville, I guess this is more speaking of Lexington, but rank the Cooley back to Providence crowd, the Beard back to Texas Tech crowd, and the Calipari back to Rupp crowd. What is going to be
so
craziest?
What's the final verdict on this issue? Do we think that Cooley was crazier than Beard?
I think this is I no disrespect to Texas Tech fans, but I think Providence fans are even just a little more rabid.
Yeah.
So I'm going to give them the slight nod in
I would agree
the way
with
they
that.
welcome Cooley back.
I thought Cooley's was and the game was boy, if I'm remembering right, that was a little too close of a game.
Yes, they hung
That
around.
would've been-
They made Providence fans worried.
I'm not saying, listen, I Providence fans, close your ears because I don't mean this. I'm not saying that part of me was cheering for Georgetown, but I did have the thought cross my mind, like, what if Georgetown wins this? Like, because it was close down the stretch. I was like, holy shit, if Georgetown wins this, I won't lie, I think it would be funny.
It would have been
I think it would have been
unbelievable.
funny.
Just to, yeah.
I think Kentucky. I think by the time Cal comes back, they'll take the classy approach or something. It depends on how the team's doing, I guess, too. Like, it depends on, like, if Arkansas is ranked like 12th in the country
That's
and Kentucky is like 500, and Cal comes back with all former Kentucky players and Kentucky coaches, and I think they get really upset. But if both teams are like, if Kentucky's fine and Arkansas, and it's just like we're both good, we both won, we don't really need to, I could see them doing the classy approach and giving him a standing ovation. And
so how bad does Arkansas have to be for him to get the welcome back montage? Like, here's all the moments we had here.
Arkansas is total dog shit, and they're like, thank you so much, John, for sinking this conference rival. What do you think about Muss at USC? Speaking of Arkansas,
I guess feels better for him to be out west. I
haven't really felt a lot of buzz so far. Is that surprising? I feel like he's got a lot of guys out of the portal, and some are like, possible mid-major stars. He grabbed the next 20-point-a-game guy from Northern Colorado, which I'm sure people are going to get hyped about after what Connect did. And a very good player from Xavier, Desmond Claude. But, like, the roster isn't all together like, Muss has got a squad. Like, it's just solid. Yeah, Terrence Williams, I forgot about him too.
And them going to the Big Ten is weird too. That almost feels like it's kind of harshed the buzz around it. That feels like one that maybe as we get closer to the season, there's going to be some. Oh yeah,
I forgot.
Eric Musselman
it's kind of flying under the radar though. Like he's so good at off-season buzz that I just feel like hasn't really popped off for me like that.
I remember the recruiting pictures he would do at Arkansas where they'd recreate like a famous basketball moment. Has he not been doing?
I need one of those. I think that you're right.
Yeah.
That's what I need. I need one of those. Because it makes so much sense for him to take that job. That felt like a great fit for him, and it did feel like it was pretty obvious he wanted out of Arkansas. And so like him taking the job felt right and good, and USC is going to have a little momentum here maybe. But then since then, I haven't really. I don't know. I need to pay more attention, I guess. But I also the thing with Muss is you don't have to pay attention. He finds you, and so far he hasn't really found me yet. So, all right. I think that might be. I don't know what else we got.
Yeah, we hit the biggest storyline. One little thing I do want to mention. I guess it's not a little thing because Zach Edey was huge, but the National Player of the Year race is going to be fun again.
Yeah,
because last year it just kind of felt like this march toward the inevitable. Like when he's putting up 25 and 11 for a top 4 team. Yeah, he's going to win it. But now there's some All-Americans coming back. R.J. Davis, Hunter Dickinson, maybe Mark Sears, Chennai Broome was an All-American. Bunch of honorable mention guys, Cooper Flagg.
Yeah,
I'm excited for that race to be something worth discussing again.
Yeah, you're right. I want to argue with people about who should win instead of just being like, because I never thought Zach Edey shouldn't win. I just wanted to I miss having those discussions like you just said. So when Dalton Connect's going off and R.J. Davis is going off, it's like, all right, can we at least have the discussion? And I know where we're going in the discussion. I know in the end we're all going to say Zach Edey is the winner, but can we at least talk about it?
Yeah.
And it just felt like every time I would try to start talking about it, even I was like, just shut the fuck up, dude. What are we doing? Shut up. What are you doing? Like, he's going to win. But yeah, that'll be fun. I'm curious to see how good Purdue is. I think Purdue will be they'll be very fun, and they won't be as good, but I think next year they will be a ton of fun. And
is Painter one of the coaches that he keeps guys around a long time and the players really love and
he would count as one of those guys. Yeah, he would count as one of those guys.
There's such a continuity program.
Yeah. I'm gonna do a complete 180 on my feelings of watching Purdue basketball this year, and then people are gonna think that I don't know, pulling some bullshit stick or something. But I legitimately think, look at Purdue's roster. Like Cam Heide, the dunk he had in the national championship game, if that doesn't get you excited about Cam Heide in a bigger role next year for Purdue. Braden Smith, I want to see him without Edey, which that's not like a slight. It's like I want to see him
what does
now.
It look like?
What does that look like now where he doesn't have good and bad. Like a lot of times I think like he had success because of Edey, obviously with pick and rolls and like the gravity that Edey has. But so, you know, like him not having Edey for that is I'm interested in that. But then the bad part is like I do think that at times he was not as aggressive. And I would love to see, like, what if next year, like, Braden Smith's like, I got to average 20 points a game for Purdue to be good. I would love to see what that looks like because I think he could do it. But also not having a 7'4" guy swallowing up every defender as he's rolling to the basket, that might make it a little bit harder. So I'm fascinated with that. Cannon Ketchens is a freak athlete, freshman. I don't know how much he's gonna play. Miles Colvin was a guy that was a freshman last year, freak athlete. I'm assuming he's gonna get more minutes next year. Yeah, I don't know. I think Purdue's roster and Lawyer, obviously a year older, I think they're going to be a ton of fun to watch. And I'm excited to see a different wrinkle with it because I think, like, they showed it at times this year when Edey would go out of the game and they would maybe they weren't as efficient. The stat nerds were like, we're not as good with it. Like, I concede all of that, but, like, the style of play, they go back to running, like, just beautiful sets. And it felt like very UConn-like, just not with not as talented of players. So yeah, I don't know how good they're going to be, but they're going to be a ton of fun, and that'll be curious to watch unfold. So
yeah, you can make peace with Purdue fans. I'm excited for you to do that.
I've been doing it for almost 4 years, Jim.
Good.
We fight and then we make up and then we fight again. But I will say, like, being back in Indiana, yeah, we got it's a long road with me and Purdue fans, I think, because like I was going back for the race and like bumping into Purdue people was a little different this year.
Yeah.
it was a little different.
Animosity.
The animosity's been turned up a little bit. I was like, relax. Next year we'll get back on track. It's all right. We'll do this. Appreciate you coming in as always. This was fun.
Yeah.
Anything else before we go? Anything to plug?
I would love to plug the burner, which is Trilly Donovan's Discord, which
I know.
You are or aren't.
Mm-hmm.
Trilly Donovan. I'll let the listeners decide.
Yeah.
But myself and the other 2 3-man weavers are doing some content for him behind the paywall there. It's $6 a month to join. All kinds of hoops discussion. I mean, we're basically talking almost all day, every day. If you got a question about a transfer fit, a potential destination, do we think this team is good? Rank the coaches in this conference. We're always going back and forth in there. So highly recommend getting in there. Our team previews that come out in September, October will all be within the burner there, so check that out.
All right. Free trial. Ohio State ? There. That's my question.
I was surprised by the hire. Coaching wise, just going with a guy who was an assistant to a fired regime, but obviously they had momentum late. And boy, I like the roster. I like what he did. Getting Michi back, I think, was a great move. Bradshaw's just kind of oozes upside. I've always loved Bruce Thornton, so I'm got a chance.
I don't know if worried's the right word. Yeah, not quite worried, but in that family, to see what Michi and Bruce look like together. I wanna. Yeah.
There's some fondness for taking jump shots between those.
Yeah. To be clear, I want Bruce Thornton running the offense. I do not want Michi Johnson running the offense, but I love Michi Johnson. So we're gonna see how that shakes out. But yeah, I'm fired up. So good answer, Jim. Good. That's the kind of answer that keeps you coming back to the show.
Perfect. Yeah, the free trial worked. Awesome. Good. Yeah. Hey, next time's 5 Timers Club. I expect my.
Really?
My robe. Yeah, that's right.
We got to do that. Yeah. What should we give for? What do I have around here for gifts for? Do you want a? You know what? 4 timers. Here's your 4-timer gift: a St. John's bobblehead of Rick Pitino. So there you go. You get a Rick Pitino bobblehead.
That's important to me. Considering last time I was on, I think that the best joke I made was a Rick Pitino one.
There you go. There's your gift. Thanks so much, Jim Root, 3-Man Weave. Go follow all of his stuff. We love him on the show, and we will be having him back on often. All right, thank you to Jim. Always a treat to have him in the studio to hash out some college basketball. He's in the trenches too. I'm full transparency. I'm not as in the off-season trenches in college basketball as I need to be, for being completely honest. I need to get back in there. Maybe I should do that this weekend. Maybe I get back in the trenches this weekend. But this is having a guy like Jim who knows what he's talking about is always helpful because he lives it. And I can't recommend the Trilly Donovan Discord enough. Trilly does great work, and those of you who watch the show should certainly agree with that. That Trilly Donovan is very, very good for college basketball, and whoever he is a hero in my eyes. So go subscribe to his Discord. Go help out the 3-Man Weave Boys. We love them all, and we love their work. One more thing before we go. So last show, Spider came on the show. We did the annual Coca-Cola 600 Indy 500 excitement podcast. We were fired up about the Kyle Larson double. What a stinker that was. I mean, we saw it kind of coming, and we talked about how weather was the weather was trending poorly, and there were some concerns about whether Kyle Larson would be able to pull it off, and which one he would prefer, or which one he would prioritize, I should say. Yeah, and in the end, he gets for those who didn't watch any of the races, Kyle Larson did the Indy 500. He was running pretty well. He led, I think, 4 laps at one point. There were 16 guys, 16 of the 33 drivers in the Indy 500 led laps at some point. Crazy. I think that might have been a record or close to it. It was one of the best Indy 500s I've ever seen in my life, and I've been to a lot of them. I've watched just about every one since I've been alive, and that one is up there with one of the best races I've ever seen. Kyle Larson was running okay. He was running well. Like yes, he was leading laps, but also like 16 different guys were leading laps, so you weren't like quite getting excited like, holy shit, he's gonna pull it off. But yeah, he was in the running for sure. And then he speeds into the pits. He gets the penalty. He doesn't really have enough time to make it up, and that kind of puts a damper on the day. The Indy 500, by the way, got delayed 4 hours because of rain. So like once the delay happened, it was already for him to pull off the double. I don't think they could have afforded any sort of delay. So once the delay happened, you're like, all right, well, he's still going to, I think, go to Charlotte and try to join the NASCAR race as soon as he can, but it's not quite the double we were hoping for. And it was already sort of off, but then he gets the pit penalty, and like that kind of put a stinger. And then he goes to Charlotte, and he by the time he gets in the car, it's raining in Charlotte, and that race gets, I guess, cancel's not there, just ended. They just call the race, and they're like, all right, whoever was in first place, you win now. A stinker of a weekend. It sucked, and the Indy 500 was awesome. It ended up being awesome after they ran the race, and once they got it in, that part was awesome. But I was fired up about the Kyle Larson double, and I know Spider was too, and he was heartbroken. He was absolutely heartbroken. So, yeah.
Finish was fun.
The Indy,
yeah,
the Indy finish, it was great, dude.
A ton of clips on my feed, which means that it broke through like the.
Yeah, that's good. I like consumer. That. The Indy 500 is one of those things that I should do a better job of like spreading the word and being like a missionary, so to speak. Like a guy who's just, I got the flag behind me. But I also like don't want to force people to like it. Yeah. I don't want to be a please like my sport guy. I just like, if you ask me what my favorite sporting event is, everyone expects me to say Final Four. It is not. It is the Indianapolis 500. It's not even close. It is by far my favorite thing in the world. Never mind sporting. It's my favorite thing in the world. But I don't want to fight people and say like you have to come to the race. Yeah. But I do believe that like if you go to the race, you'll love it. It's incredible. It's just an incredible time. The vibes are so. It's Midwest Mardi Gras, dude. It's just like so many people in such a good mood, and I think the racing is second to none. I think if you actually sit down and watch the Indy 500, you're like, wow, this is surprisingly very entertaining. And everyone does it like, yeah, they're turning left, it's boring, whatever. And then I just go, all right, if that's how you see it, you're never going to – if you watch that race on Sunday and you're like, this is boring, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying like you'll never like racing ever. You might as well never watch any race ever because you're just not a racing fan, which is fine. But that was like one of the best races I've ever seen, yeah. 16 dudes led laps. What more would you want?
Yeah, I saw the comparison chart of the
F1.
The F1 race top 10 versus the Indy 500 top 10, and like the number of passes.
But what makes the Indy 500 so awesome is that there really are, going into the race, there really are like 20 to 25 guys who can win it out of the 33, which is crazy. That's insane. And that's not even true of IndyCar on a day. Like they're gonna be, I think, at Detroit this weekend, and I don't think that's true of Detroit. Like I don't think the Detroit race you're going into it saying like 25 guys could win this. I think it was just like the way the Indy 500 works and the fact that like everybody goes balls to the wall to win it. It's a crapshoot, and it makes it so fun. But Joseph Newgarden wins second year in a row, TJ, that he's won on turn 3 last lap. So you race, I guess that comes out to, he basically does 499 miles, basically. He wins in the last mile plus. That's crazy.
Well,
2 years in a row, he's in second place, and then he makes the final pass with like less than a mile to go. And
what more can you ask for?
Yeah, so I can't recommend it enough. I did see a lot of people talking about it too, but it's hard for me to tell because my feed's a little more curated to Indy 500 stuff. But it did sort of feel like it's popping off a little bit more. So it has me fired up because I love it so much. And next year I do want to bring everybody with me if you guys are open to it. I said I was going to do it this year, but then I don't know. I feel I want people to want to do it, and I don't want to drag people to the race, and then I feel like a responsibility for you to have a good time, and then now I'm like, it's like kind of like showing your buddy like a funny YouTube video, and you're just like looking over their shoulder, like, are you laughing? Yeah. Are you laughing yet? Are you laughing? So I want people to be excited to go, and then if you are excited, I'll take you, and I think you'll have a kick-ass time, and it'll be fun. So I want the Mostly Sports guys, especially, to come. All right, I think that's it. Thanks to Jim. Thanks to everybody watching, listening. We'll be back. We had I should have said why we're releasing this. It was a wonky schedule this week because we're doing the roof ball thing with the Yak. So this was out on a Thursday. I don't know. I got to say that every so often because people get confused as to what's going on. But we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming next week. It was a holiday week, and this week was a weird week, but next week we'll be back. It'll be a little more cohesive, and we'll have a little more plan. But there's with a shortened week here at Barstool, this week was a little more chaotic. So next week we'll be back in a regular flow of things, and we will see you then.